Have you ever found yourself in a place so isolated, so quiet, that the silence itself began to feel like a presence, where every little creak, every rustle, it just sends a shiver down your spine? Not because you see something, but because your mind insists something is there.
Oh, yeah. It's that primal edge of human experience, isn't it? That vastness of true wilderness where the boundaries of reality seem to thin out a bit and your own internal world almost takes on an external life.
Absolutely. And that unsettling feeling, that kind of unique blend of quiet and, well, creeping dread, is exactly what we're plunging into today. Welcome to our deep dive into the mysterious world of remote cabins and the strange encounters that can happen within their shadowy embrace. This session isn't just about telling spooky stories, though. It's really about unpacking a series of gripping first-hand accounts, trying to understand what makes these isolated experiences so profoundly chilling.
Right. Our mission here is to extract the most potent insights from these personal narratives. We'll look beyond just the surface events. We want to understand the universal threads of fear that, bind them together. And crucially, explore the profound psychological impact of isolation on the people who live through these moments. What does it actually do to the mind when it's left completely alone in the dark?
Yeah. The sources for this deep dive are a collection of really vivid, detailed personal narratives, experiences that truly blur the line between just eerie quiet and outright terror. Our goal is to understand not just what happened, but why it felt so terrifying, and maybe what these stories tell us about ourselves. So to kick us off, let's unpack Jake's cabin experience. Picture Jake, okay? He calls himself a city guy. He rented this old cabin in the woods, miles from any town, really, just seeking peace and quiet. Wanted to escape the city noise, Unplug. The cabin itself was pretty rustic, old wooden porch, little chimney, standing all alone among these tall, tall trees deep in the wilderness.
It's the classic setup for these kinds of tales, isn't it? The individual seeking solace, maybe a return to nature, only to find that nature, or, well, something within it, isn't quite as benign as they hoped. That first night, apparently pure calm. It's the shift afterwards, that subtle intrusion that really sets the stage for a genuine psychological unraveling.
And shift it does. The second night, Jake's sitting by the fire, maybe reading, when he hears it. A faint noise outside, footsteps on dry leaves. He shrugs it off at first, an animal probably. But later, lying in bed, the noise comes back. He described them as footsteps, slow and steady, walking around the cabin. His heart starts pounding. He tries to rationalize it, maybe a deer or raccoon, but the sound is just too heavy, too deliberate. He creeps to the window, peeks outside. Nothing, just dark, silent forest. But that chill, that feeling of being watched, it settles deep in his bones.
And what's happening there psychologically is fascinating. It's our brain's natural defense mechanism kicking in, the urge to rationalize. In isolation, when you're deprived of familiar city sounds and social validation, your mind becomes this highly efficient pattern recognition machine. But it also starts projecting internal anxieties onto ambiguous sounds, ambiguous stimuli. Jake's brain is working overtime trying to fit the inexplicable into a known box. When it can't, that's when his sense of security really starts to crumble.
And it just escalates from there. It gets more personal, more terrifying. The next day, he tries to clear his head, takes a walk in the woods, almost forgets the night before. But when he gets back to the cabin, that oppressive feeling, that sense of not being alone, it just rushes back. That night, the noises are louder, closer. Footsteps right outside his window, he said. Leaves crunching, the wooden porch creaking. He grabs a flashlight, heart hammering, opens the door slowly. The beam cuts through the darkness, but no one's there. He steps outside, shines the light into the trees. The forest is just eerily silent. Nothing.
That silence is key. The absence of a clear source for the sounds, paradoxically, it just intensifies the fear. It creates this cognitive dissonance. His senses are screaming, something is there, but his eyes confirm nothing. This ambiguity is insidious. It attacks his very perception of reality, which erodes his sanity far more effectively than, say, a visible threat might.
And then comes the real moment of dread. He turns to go back inside, and that's when he sees it. A shadowy figure standing at the edge of the forest, just beyond the reach of his flashlight. He just freezes. The figure doesn't move, just stands there watching him. A wave of pure primal fear washes over him. He takes a step back, hands shaking, and then the figure seems to just dissolve into the darkness.
He rushes back inside, locks the door, can barely breathe. Doesn't sleep a wink, obviously. And this is where his experience moves beyond just sound, isn't it? The visual manifestation, however fleeting it was, it validates his growing unease. And the dissolving part offers no closure at all. It leaves him grappling with this impossible reality, further eroding his sense of what's real and what isn't.
The next morning, he's just had enough. He packs up super quickly, desperate to leave. But as he's loading his car, he finds something on the porch. Something that makes his blood run cold. It was a small, old-fashioned doll, dirty and worn, lying right there on the steps. He picks it up, feeling this profound chill. Where did it come from? Who left it there? He drops it, trembling, gets in his car and drives away, glancing back in the rearview mirror. The cabin looks dark, empty, but he can't shake the feeling that something was watching him, something that didn't want him to leave.
That doll, wow, it's such a chilling culmination. It transforms the experience from something purely auditory or visual into something physically present, something that directly interacted with his space. It's a tangible piece of the unexplained, making the fear deeply personal and suggesting a deliberate, maybe even malevolent awareness. And the lasting impact you mentioned, he sometimes hears faint footsteps in his apartment hallway. That idea that something followed him home, that just shows how deep the psychological imprint of an experience like that can be. It basically rewrites his perception of safety, even back in the city.
Okay, so our next story offers a really stark contrast. It brings in a very different kind of cabin encounter. This one involves Tommy, who's 12, and his little brother Jake, who's 10. They're on their first camping trip. And they're just full of that pure excitement of childhood exploration, right? Surrounded by this thick and dark forest near their lake campsite.
Yeah, the setup here, with the innocence of youth and the promise of adventure, it makes the twist all the more impactful, I think. It starts like a classic kids' adventure story, but it quickly descends into something genuinely perilous.
So while they're out collecting sticks for their campfire, they spot this small old cabin off in the distance. It looks totally abandoned, broken windows and a door hanging off its hinges. They're curious, naturally, and despite this sort of eerie feeling and a strange smell, their childhood curiosity just wins out. They sprint towards it. But as they get closer, they hear a rustling sound from inside the cabin. That's all it takes. They don't wait around. They just turn and run back to the campsite as fast as they can. Didn't tell their parents anything.
That initial ambiguous sound triggers an immediate flight response. It really highlights how quickly curiosity can flip to primal fear when you're in an unknown environment, especially for kids whose imaginations are still so vivid, so unconstrained by adult logic sometimes. Their brains are processing potential danger, and their gut instinct is just flee.
And the dread just builds that night. They're sitting by the campfire, but Tommy can't stop thinking about the cabin, keeps glancing into the dark woods. Later, when they're in the tent, they hear it again, a rustling sound, but this time just outside their tent. Then it gets worse, a low growling noise. Their hearts are just pounding against their ribs. They just wait, frozen minutes stretching out like hours until finally the growling stops.
Okay, see, this is a crucial shift compared to Jake's story. For Jake, the threat stayed ambiguous, sort of eroding his sense of reality. But for Tommy and Jake, the sound progresses from an unclear rustle to a specific threatening growl. That marks a clear escalation towards a tangible danger, not just a psychological one. It grounds their fear in something visceral, something immediate.
The next morning, even though their parents kind of brush it off, oh, it was just an animal, Tommy and Jake can't shake the feeling. They decide they have to go back to the cabin, but in daylight this time. When they get there, they find big footprints in the dirt, leading right to the now open cabin door. They peek inside, and their hearts just sink. In the middle of the cabin, there's a bed with this tattered blanket, and on a small table next to it, a knife covered in something dark and sticky.
Wow. That's the moment. That's where the perceived threat becomes horrifyingly real. The visual evidence, the footprints, the open door, and especially that dark and sticky substance on the knife, it provides undeniable confirmation of genuine peril. This isn't just imagination playing tricks anymore. This is a direct encounter with potential human depravity, shifting the fear from the unknown to the concretely malevolent.
And then the absolute terror. Standing right in the doorway is an old man. He's got wild hair and dark and empty eyes, and he's holding a long, sharp knife looking right at them. He demands to know what they're doing there, stepping closer with each word. They stammer out some apology, backing away slowly, then just turn and run as fast as their legs can carry them, not stopping until they reach the campsite. Their father sees the pure terror on their faces, immediately calls the police.
This brings up a really interesting point. How does our brain process a concrete human danger differently than that unseen presence Jake experienced? With Jake, the threat was amorphous. It was constantly attacking his sense of reality. But for Tommy and Jake, finding that knife and then seeing the man himself, that grounds the terror in something visceral, something you can actually fight or escape from, even if that escape is just pure flight. The fear, while incredibly intense, is directed and immediate. It focuses that fight or flight response.
Right. And the police arrive, they go to the cabin, and they actually return with the old man in handcuffs. Turns out he'd been living out here for years and was wanted for some serious crimes. The officer tells the boys they were lucky. They pack up and go home, but the woods, they no longer feel like an adventure. They feel dangerous and dark. That camping trip, once a source of pure excitement, ends up haunting their dreams for a long time.
Yeah, the lingering impact here isn't about some unexplained mystery, is it? It's the profound trauma of a direct brush with genuine human evil. Their perception of the wilderness and maybe even their fundamental sense of safety in the world has been fundamentally altered by that. It shifted from a place of wonder and exploration to one of significant, undeniable threat that leaves a lasting psychological scar, no doubt.
Okay, for our final story, we shift gears again. We move to a different type of encounter, this one driven purely by a dare. This character, described as someone who loves adventure, always seeking thrills, takes up a friend's challenge. Spend a night alone in an abandoned and supposedly haunted cabin.
That's a bold move, isn't it? To willingly step into a situation that's already loaded with a reputation for the supernatural. It sets up a fascinating dynamic where expectation and belief can actively shape the experience. The mind is sort of primed to find what it expects to find.
The cabin itself sounds pretty creepy. Old and worn with broken windows and a fagging roof. Inside, dust everywhere, creaking floorboards with every step. Just one room. They set up their lantern, explore a bit, find a rusty old knife and some moldy books. Classic abandoned cabin stuff. As night falls, the forest sounds seem to get louder. Then a loud thump from the roof. Initially, they think, okay, animal, raccoon, maybe, but then a faint whispering starts. Couldn't be made out, just whispering coming from a corner. They shine a flashlight, nothing there. Just shadows playing tricks, they hope.
That progression is interesting. From a plausible, natural explanation, an animal on the roof, to something as ambiguous and unsettling as an unintelligible whisper. It's a classic psychological buildup. It's our brain, especially when deprived of clear sensory input in the dark, trying to construct meaning from randomness. And it often projects our deepest fears onto that void. The mind starts grasping for explanations, and when none quite fit, the unease deepens into real dread.
Then the air grows colder, noticeably colder, almost palpable, distinct footsteps outside, slow and deliberate, crunching leaves. They grab that rusty knife they found, heart pounding, adrenaline surging. The footsteps stop right outside the door. And then the door just creaked open slowly all on its own. They shine the flashlight, no one's there. The door keeps opening wider and this cold breeze rushes in, chilling them right to the bone. Then they see it. A shadowy figure standing in the doorway, described as tall and thin with glowing eyes, a pale and gaunt face with a twisted smile and long, bony fingers. They're just frozen with fear, can't move.
This is really where the power of expectation meets the profound effect of isolation, I think. The environment, combined with that preconceived notion of a haunted cabin, primes the mind to interpret ambiguous stimuli as definitely supernatural. The manifestation of the figure, coupled with the dramatic opening of the door, it moves this from subtle disturbance to an undeniable presence. It's like a complete sensory assault designed to overwhelm and terrify.
The figure slowly steps inside, coming closer. The person backs away until they hit the wall. The figure reaches out a hand, revealing those long, bony fingers again. So close they can feel the cold radiating from it. They just squeeze their eyes shut, expecting the worst. But then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the figure vanishes. The room is silent again, the air feels warmer. They try to tell themselves, it was my imagination, the darkness, the isolation playing tricks.
That vanishing act is particularly unnerving, precisely because it offers no closure, no explanation. It leaves the witness grappling with what they've seen or think they've seen without the clear resolution of the figure either attacking or revealing itself somehow. The brain, which craves explanation, is left with this void, and it often fills that void with continued terror and self-doubt.
I see that.
Yeah. They decide right then they cannot stay a moment longer. As they're scrambling to leave, they hear the whispering again, but this time it's clearer. Leave now, never leave at all. Same. That is all they need to hear. They bolt out of the cabin, running blindly through the woods, getting scratched by branches, stumbling over roots, not daring to look back. They never tell anyone exactly what happened that night. They endure the teasing for bailing on the dare, but they know what they saw or felt they saw, and they vow never ever to return to that place. That explicit warning, leave now, never leave at all, is so chilling because it suggests direct communication, a deliberate intent behind the phenomena. Now, whether this presence was truly external or a powerful manifestation of extreme fear and isolation generated within the mind, well, either way, it certainly functions as a powerful self-preservation trigger. Get out. And the secrecy they maintain afterwards, despite the teasing, it really underscored the deeply personal and profoundly unsettling nature of the encounter. It becomes a truth only they can carry.
So, okay, let's try and pull this together. What does it all mean when we look at these stories side by side? It's fascinating how these narratives, even though they end up in different places, supernatural, criminal, psychological, they all tap into some really deep-seated human fears, especially fear of the unknown when we're alone and vulnerable.
Indeed. I think one clear thread woven through all these accounts is the immense psychological power of isolation itself. It's not just that sounds become louder in the deep quiet, like you said earlier. It's that your brain, when it's deprived of familiar social cues and environmental context, becomes this hypervigilant pattern recognition machine. In these environments, every creak, every shadow, every rustle gets scrutinized. And the mind is just prone to projecting internal anxieties and creating patterns, often perceiving ambiguous stimuli as immediate, even malevolent threats. The true horror isn't just what might be out there, but how isolation can turn your own mind into your most terrifying antagonist.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's such a strong contrast in the nature of the threat across these stories, isn't there? You think about Jake's experience or the one driven by the dare. The threats feel ambiguous, maybe supernatural. Footsteps that lead nowhere, shadows that dissolve, whispers that warn. But then you have Tommy and Jake's story, where the threat shifts dramatically from ambiguous sounds to a very real, very human criminal.
Exactly. And it's a crucial distinction in how fear operates, I think. An ambiguous threat, like Jake's shadowy figure, is insidious because it attacks your very perception of reality. You're left questioning your senses, your sanity. That creates a deeper, more pervasive fear that can linger long after the event. A tangible threat, however terrifying it is in the moment, provides a concrete target for your fear, and often a clear path to action or escape, even if it's just running. The fear, while primal, is directed. It allows the brain to engage its most basic survival mechanisms, fight or flight.
Another powerful and honestly often heartbreaking thread is the lingering aftermath. Whether the threat was ultimately seen as supernatural, criminal, or maybe even purely psychological in the end, these experiences left a profound and lasting impact on the people involved. The fear isn't just contained to that moment in the cabin, it profoundly redefines their relationship with similar environments. Or, like we saw with Jake, it can even feel like it follows them home.
The indelible mark these experiences leave is crucial. Perceived danger, even if it's later rationalized away or explained, can fundamentally alter a person's psychological landscape. It can literally rewire neural pathways, shifting their perception of safety, of trust, maybe even their place in the world. It really shows how profoundly our experiences, especially the traumatic ones, shape our future responses and how we construct our memories.
And finally, there's the role of sensory perception and expectation. You touched on this with the Dare story. How much are expectations, like going to a cabin specifically because it's known to be haunted, influencing what we end up hearing and seeing? Or how much does our heightened sensitivity and absolute silence change our interpretation of, normal forest sounds? The rustling, the footsteps, the whispers, how much of it is objective reality and how much is subjective interpretation? A story our own minds tell us, shaped by fear and anticipation.
It really invites us to consider that fascinating interplay between our external environment and our internal landscape, doesn't it? Are these just compelling campfire tales, spooky stories we tell each other? Or do they offer real insights into how our minds cope with things like extreme sensory deprivation, cognitive biases, and the profound impact of perceived danger? How that shapes not only our memories, but literally alters our future perception of reality. They certainly underscore how fragile our sense of what's real can actually be when we're pushed to the edges of our comfort zone.
Yeah. This deep dive has definitely taken us through some truly spine-tingling accounts. But more than that, it's encouraged us, I hope, to think about the very nature of fear itself, the profound impact of isolation, and that delicate, often terrifying line between imagination and reality. We've seen how a simple quest for peace can turn into a chilling ordeal, and how some encounters, even if they get resolved like the boy's story, leave an indelible, life-altering mark.
They certainly make you think twice about seeking out that truly isolated cabin in the woods, don't they? What you find there might not be what you expect, or perhaps what you thought you knew about yourself.
Indeed. It leaves you with a final thought to mull over, maybe. In the quiet depths of the wilderness, what is truly more terrifying, the shadows that might lurk outside the cabin, or perhaps the ones that we carry within ourselves?